Well, normally the way I know when to quit preaching is by looking at the clock. But tonight I think that I might have a different measuring stick, and I thought I might look out and notice the women's fans, and as they get going really faster, like this, right now they're just pumping. Right now they speed it up, and then I know when Mitch goes to sleep, it's time to quit. So that'd be a good one. And then it's funny how things hit you about your life years ago. But when I was in basic training down in San Antonio, Texas, in that heat, our squadron goofed up one time, and so they said, we're going to teach you a lesson. And so they pulled us in and told us to dress in warm fatigues. And then we did that. Then they said, now put on your brogans, your heavy boots. And now then, they put on those wool overcoats. And if you can imagine that down there in Texas. They said, put us out on the street and said, now, we're not only going to march you, but we're going to run you. Now, what had happened is that somebody had stole somebody's watch. And they said, now, whoever it is going to confess that, or we're going to run you until every one of you drops. And so they turned around and started us off. And we go running. We run around the block and run around the block about 3 times. Then the sergeant guiding us, he changed with another guy. And then he runs us around there. And then they would stop every once in a while and say, anybody want to confess? And nobody did. Okay, he said, now we're going to run you until you drop. And so we kept running and we kept running. And all of a sudden, a guy up in front of me hit the ground. And I yelled, you go jump over him, just keep jumping, keep running. And they stopped. I'll never forget, he goes back and takes his foot and kicks him off in the ditch like that. And says, now, every one of you going to be there. So turn around, and he started running us again. And so they ran us, and another guy dropped, pow, and kicked him off in the ditch. Now, I forgot whether it's just those 2 or whether it was those 3 that they did. But that made an impression on me. And what I thought tonight is, I'll just keep preaching. And when I heard the 3rd guy drop to the floor, that's when I'll quit then. So if you're wondering how long I'm going to be preaching, why, we'll give that a try tonight then. Otherwise, when I get just a little warm. By the way, it was 87 in here, I think Scott said, when we started. Of course, every person that comes in, it gets a little bit hotter. And it's 90 degrees outside. And Wednesday, when we canceled class, it was 106 degrees in Monroe all afternoon. So you can get some idea of what it was here in this building and the reason that we canceled it in there. Okay, let's turn our attention now to a rather short lesson tonight in the book of Hosea. Now, as we look at this, I will just start out to kind of get your attention by saying, what do burnt cakes and silly doves and prostitutes, I could say, have in common? And of course, we would say, well, I don't know. But Hosea is going to tell us. So that's the way we're going to begin our lesson tonight, in talking about Hosea, to kind of get into this particular lesson that we want to be studying. Now, tonight, I'm not going to be talking about a whole great passage like I intended to, but I'm going to make it rather short. And here's the lesson that I hope that we will get. I want you to notice how these prophets preached. And notice some of the unique things about them. Now, I've pointed this out before, that listen to them and listen to prophetic language, because they preached in a certain way. Just like people today talk in a certain way. People in the South talk in a different way than people in the North talk. And it's all within our culture. And we have to learn really how people talk before we know how what they mean. Men talk a different way than women talk. And so we just automatically know this, but we don't know it as far as prophets are concerned. And as a result, a lot of times we will take things literally when it's obvious that they mean things figuratively. And so tonight we're going to see how Hosea did this, how he would use these figurative things. And we're doing this in this realm. That is that As Hosea is talking, we know he's talking to Israel. We've already studied this. We know that Israel has gone astray. We've already studied these things. So we know what he's condemning. Israel has gone astray. They have made themselves those gods. Remember those golden calves. And they have forgotten the God who is in heaven. They've forgotten about him. And they now have a spirit, a disposition, an attitude that Hosea says is an attitude of whoredom. They just have a disposition like a woman would have if you can't keep her out of prostitution. You go get her out of the first street and she goes right back again. And you go help her and you get her out of trouble and she goes right back again. And we see these things. That how do you get people out of those situations when they have the disposition or the attitude that that's what they want to do? So now then, Hosea has already talked about this. Tonight, he's going to talk about Israel, and he's going to tell them how bad they are, why they're going to be destroyed, and he's going to use ovens and burnt cakes and silly doves in order to show them this very thing. So let's do it now the way that we've been talking about here. We'll take the passage of Scripture now in Hosea 7, and then we'll just take each verse, I'll move it over, and then we'll take a look at it. Now we can cover them pretty rapidly because they're pretty well self-explanatory when we know the background. He says here, when I would heal Israel, then is the iniquity of Ephraim uncovered. Remember, Israel and Ephraim are the same thing. Israel is a nation. Ephraim is the largest tribe within the nation representing that. It's kind of like America and Washington, D.C. Same thing, except Washington, D.C. is the most important city that there is in the country. It's the one that is really ruling our country. So, he said, now, when the time comes that I would heal Israel, then is their iniquity uncovered. It's kind of like a rebellious child. And this rebellious child goes out and gets in all kind of trouble. And finally, the parents get the child straightened out, and the child says, I'm sorry, I'm going to do what's right. And so the child is really good for 10 days. And about the time that the parent says, okay, I think now that he sees the point, I think now that I'll let him start driving the car again, just about that time that he got him straightened out, the kid goes off on a dope trip. And now then you're back again. And so the parent in frustration says, just about the time that I see this and got this iniquity here uncovered and straightened out in here, or straightened out, then his iniquity is uncovered. It all comes to the forefront again, over and over and over. That's what happened to Ephraim. God would work with them. They would have some kind of a change of attitude, and it looked like that things are going to work well for Israel, and God is getting ready to heal Israel, and then, pow, they go off on another one of their drunken trips. But their drunken trips were idolatry. See, their drunken trips are idolatry rather than some of the things that the rest of us might have. So he said, now just about the time that I get ready to heal them, they do those stupid things all over again. For they commit falsehood, and the thief entereth in, and the troop of robbers ravageth without. In other words, instead of the nation straightening up, about the time that it looks like it is getting ready to straighten up. Now you remember, God would punish Israel to try to get them to turn. Now he would do it way before he ever took them into Assyrian captivity. He would do it by causing them to have a drought, crop failure, or too much rain, or this or that. The bugs come and ravage their crops. And so they would repent, it looked like. They would change, it appeared. But then just as soon as things got a little bit better, here it is. What is the nation like? The nation is just a lying nation, a thieving, stealing nation. And God says, what am I going to do with the nation of Israel here? It said, they consider not in their hearts that I remember all their wickedness. Here's a nation that doesn't really stop to think. I know what they're doing. and I consider all of their wickedness, but yet they just keep on doing it. Just like a child that thinks, well, mom and dad has forgotten about that, and then they try it again there. And so then he goes ahead and he says, now they have their own doings beset them. They are before my face. So what was Israel's problem? Here God says, it is their own doings. What they are doing is what the problem is. Now, we all grew up as young people. We all grew up as teenagers. We all grew up as immature adults. And we all thought and acted really the same way. And as we go through these things, we see that about the time here that a disobedient son, his father punishes him and chastises him and takes the car away and causes him some problems, and then he gets it back. He thinks it's dad's fault. Dad and mom, they do not understand this culture we're in. They do not understand the world today. Why is it they're always picking on me? Why is it always me? They don't pick on somebody else. Why me? Well, mom and dad could look at him and say, son, it's your own doing. You're the one who's causing it. That's what God is saying. He said they don't stop to realize that and to think that through. They make the king glad with their wickedness and the princes with their lies. Now, this is kind of unusual. Here it is. These people are wicked. They're liars. And what do you know? The rulers like it. It makes them glad. They're happy that they have people that they're ruling over who are wicked and liars. As we look at our government, we're all frustrated from this from time to time. And we look at the people that are under the leaders and we see what they do and how wicked they are and people in Congress and they do it. And what do our great leaders do? Do they come to the forefront and do they say, we will not put up with this? Absolutely, as President of the United States, I will not tolerate what these people are doing, this immorality. And you say, no, it's never mentioned. It's just covered over. It's never mentioned. A good example is something that I saw in the news last night. That down in South Carolina, in the last election, why the Black Panthers assigned people to go and monitor the election. And you probably saw it. Now here are these Black Panthers and got on all their garb and a nightstick. And if you come up to vote, if you're not going to vote for a certain candidate, you didn't get in. You better just go away. Now they took pictures of them and they're caught red-handed, and so they took them to court. And they just found out this week, as they took them to court, they were guilty. And the court found them guilty. And do you know what our government did? The Justice Department? They said, we're going to just throw it out and turn them loose. And they just threw it out. Friday. But not only that, you know what else they did? It says they now have chosen that same guy that they show with the nightstick to be a judge of the next election again. Does that bother you? Does that make you just say, why don't our princes, why don't our kings demand justice? Well, that's what he's talking about here. That's the situation that they had back there. Now, he tells the condition that Israel is in. How bad is Israel? Well, they have made ready their hearts like an oven. While they lie in wait, the baker sleepeth all the night, and in the morning it burneth as a flaming fire. So here's what the problem is. They've cooked their heart. They burned their heart. They are so dumb that they're like a baker. He goes to bed that night. He doesn't turn the fire down. He just keeps the fire roaring in the oven and it burns things up. That's what they do. He said that's the kind of people they are. That's the kind of heart that they really have in there. So he says here, they are all hot as an oven. They're just burned to crisp like an oven is burnt, and devour the judges, and all their kings are fallen. And there is none among them that calleth unto me. But here as the nation is burning up with all of this wickedness, nobody's calling unto God. It'll all work out. It's all fine. Ephraim, he mixeth himself among the peoples. Ephraim is a cake not turned. So you see, he's trying to describe what Ephraim is. Ephraim is a hot oven. Not only that, but Ephraim is like a cake. He's like a baker that makes a cake. And so he takes this cake and he takes the flour and the mixtures, and instead of putting it together in the right order in there, he mixes totally opposite stuff with it. And he says, Ephraim is mixed himself among the people. That's what Ephraim has done. That's what the nation has done. The nation, now we're going to look at it as a cake. And it's mixed itself up with all the heathens, with all the idolaters. It's serving Jehovah halfway and serving idols with the other half. So that, he said, that's what Ephraim is in there. And he says he is a cake not turned. Now picture what it is. The baker puts this cake in the oven, keeps the oven roaring all night long, puts the cake in, goes to sleep, and never wakes up to turn the cake over to be baked on the other side. Wakes up the next morning, what will he find with his cake? Well, it's ruined. It's burnt to a crisp all the way through. You say, is there any part of it you can save? No, it's just, that cake is totally done. God said, that's what Ephraim is. You are a burnt cake. You're totally done. You're wicked through and through. You're evil. I'm getting ready to destroy you. This is his point. And in order to make that point, instead of saying, you're wicked all the way through, he uses that cake as an illustration. You are a burnt cake. The next time that you're dealing with somebody that is just totally rotten through and through, you try every way that you can to help them. They can't be helped. They're wicked. Everything they do is wicked. Just think of them. They're burnt cake. And what do you do if you pull it out of the oven? It's only to be destroyed. He said, strangers have devoured his strength, and he knoweth it not. All these heathens, these idolaters, they've mixed themselves, and instead of making Ephraim stronger, it's devoured his strength, and he doesn't know it. That's the problem. You see, a lot of times wicked people do not know they're wicked. They are totally rotten, and they don't know it. And the same thing is true with this nation. This nation was a burnt cake. This nation was rotten through and through. And they didn't know it. If somebody knows what kind of person they are, there's hope for them. And they ask, there's hope for them. It doesn't make any difference how bad they get. They can be on the worst drugs in the world. And you look and there's no hope. Well, there is hope if they know it. And if they say, I understand where I am and I need to get out. But the problem is, they don't know it. And so you can't get them out. That's what he said it is. He said, yea, gray hairs are here and there upon him, and he knoweth it not. So he said another analogy that I might give you. See, all of these are analogies. All these are examples. He said, Israel reminds me of an old man. Reminds me of an old man who has gray hair, and so he's getting old. And he doesn't know he's getting old. He doesn't know it. Now that's bad stuff. When you stop and you look at it and you think about it, well, what happens when a person gets old and older and real old and they don't know that they're old? And you say, well, how could that happen? Well, it can, because nobody really feels that they're old. Remember, there's that old adage which is true when you ask people, what do you consider old age when you're old? And everybody will tell you 10 years older than what I am. That's what they will tell you. That really is what I consider old. But now, can an old person cause a lot of trouble? Oh boy. An old man can cause as much trouble as a young kid, all wrapped up in his evil ways. And here you have this old man that doesn't know that he's old, doesn't know that the world is going on by him, and yet he's going to control the situation. He's going to do this or that. So that's what Ephraim is. You can't reason with him. You can't reason with Ephraim, just like you can't reason with an old man that doesn't know he's old. Are you getting the point of Hosea? Of where Hosea is trying to show these people, this is how bad that you really are, that's in there. So then he goes ahead and he tells now why God must chastise Israel. And the pride of Israel doth testify to himself. Now the word pride is generally a bad word. Mitch had an excellent lesson on that this morning in class in here. And pride is generally very bad. But on the other hand, pride is very good. When it's something that you are happy with and you're content with, without it not making you feel that self-sufficient, superior individual. Now, notice this. If you were to ask me, Lowell, describe yourself, and I say, I am a proud man. Well, you look and you see how I talk and you see how I act, and you say, man, isn't he sickening? But now on the other hand, I can say this. Okay, let me tell you what I am. I have pride in my God. My God is my pride. I'm proud of him. I think he is the greatest thing there is in the universe. There's nothing that stands on the same plane. My God is superior. My God is so great. My God is my pride. That's what he's talking about. When he said, and the pride of Israel doth testify, it means God. The God that Israel claims to be their God, he has told you how bad you are. See? But even though God has told you that, they have not returned to Jehovah, their God, nor sought him for all of this. It's just talk. Oh, how great God is. How much he means to me. And yet in all this, they don't seek him. They don't ask for his advice. They don't let him do it. Now, Ephraim is like a silly dove. Now, there's another thing, see? He's an oven, turned cake. Now he's a silly dove. Well, in what sense is he a silly dove? Well, he doesn't have understanding. Doves flitter around and land here and land there and land here. And if you catch one and try to talk to it and say, now, why did you do that? There's no reasoning power. It's just a silly dove. And the dove goes where it thinks it's the best for it to be without any reasoning power that's there. Now he said, that's the way Israel is. And here's what they do. Instead of being like a dove and flying around and landing on a telephone wire, Israel, when they get in trouble, they fly down to Egypt or run up to Assyria. That's who they go to for help. When they need help, they don't go to God. That's wisdom. They're like a silly dove. They go to other places that they think they can find help, which is these heathen countries. And the fact is, this heathen country is going to be the one that actually captures them. Then he says, now when they start going to these nations, then I'll spread my net upon them, and I'll catch them, and I'm going to bring them down like birds, and I'm going to turn them over. And he's talking about that captivity that he has there. So I said, that's the condition that Israel is, that's in there. Now if you notice, we turn to chapter 8. The fans are going really fast, which means it's time to stop. I was going to go ahead and cover chapter 8. It's the reason it came up here, because it goes ahead really in the same thing, but we'll do that this next week. But what I want us to see tonight is the language and how Hosea uses this language. You remember Jesus talking in parables, how he uses illustrations? And so Hosea does all of this in that way. Okay, should you be here tonight and your life is not right with God and you need to make it right, we'd be happy to help you in any way to be cleansed by the blood of Christ while we stand and while we sing this song.